What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Protocol Pegasus here, putting it back to you guys in Remnant from the Ashes, covering my all-new Heroes of the Gladiator build. So without further ado, let's get into it. If I open up my character sheet here, you can see that I'm using a sidearm called Pride of the Iskall, with the weapon mod called Vampiric attached onto it. Basically what happens is when I use the weapon mod, it ends up sending out little insects, which attacks onto enemies, and from there they will explode, allowing me to siphon health from them and continuously heal. Really, really nice to sustain. From there, I'm using the assault rifle, base primary weapon, really good all around. I am using the blink token mod attached onto it. This allows me to blink to my enemy, and when I arrive at that enemy's location, I end up doing an AoE shock pulse, which ends up doing damage, which is really nice for clearing out small ads. I'm using the legendary Hero Sword. Hero Sword can be purchased from the vendor in the shop if you have the DLC. From there, this sends out energy shockwaves, which allow you to hit your enemies from a range. From there, this does use a little bit of your stamina while going about doing so you have to be cautious in that regard. But at the end of the day, it is probably one of the best melee weapons in the game, at least in my opinion. With the armor, I'm changing up a little bit. I'm using one ritual set and two gladiator pieces. The ritual set allows me to regenerate my mod capacity a little bit faster. From there, the gladiator set allows me to increase my damage output by 15% because I have the two pieces here when I'm in close proximity of my enemies. From there, the reason I do the ritual hat to be able to regenerate my mod capacity is because I like having blink up a lot to clear out ads, and I like having vampiric up to be able to keep my healing up, because that's the only survivability I'm going to have from this build as of right now. From there, the amulet I am utilizing is called Twisted Idol. Twisted Idol increases my armor efficiency by 30%, so it makes me a little bit tankier. It also reduces my encumbrance by 15. If you don't know what that means, it basically means that I become lighter and faster, which makes my rolls also a lot lighter and faster as well. Same concept for my ring. So the band of the Pollox, probably pronouncing that wrong, but I digress. Increases damage by 15% and reduces range damage by 15%. Excuse me. So melee damage is fantastic. You do get a little bit of a debuff when it comes to range, but since this is going to be a melee setup build, we don't really care about that range damage currently at the moment. When you are wearing the band of the caster, this allows you to increase melee damage by 10%, evade speed by 15%, and also makes me lighter by 25, basically 25 encumbrance points, which allows me to just be a lot faster and more efficient. And I am wearing the band of the caster. That also allows me to increase my melee speed by 10%, but reduces fire rate by 15%. And same concept when I'm wearing the band of the Pulux, which is this one here. Melee damage is increased by 10%, evade speed is increased by 15%, and encumbrance is reduced by 25%. So with everything here, my encumbrance is pretty much reduced by a whopping 65%, which means even though I'm wearing a heavier set, I am still very, very light and very, very fast, which is really nice when utilizing a melee build to tie in your quick stabs and animations. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. From there, if we jump over to my traits, one of the primary traits I think you should focus on when going for a melee setup build such as this one is going to be Hard Charger. This increases your melee charge damage, and then you should also utilize what is called Rapid Strike, which increases my melee speed. And then there is one more which allows you to, give me one moment, melee power generation. So basically every time I happen to use Arcane Strike, I end up dealing more damage with my mods because I can generate them faster. So from there, basically every time I melee, I just generate mods a lot quicker, which is really nice. Once again, as you guys may know if you've seen some of my previous build videos, excuse me, I am a huge fan of going for every trait within the course of the game to be able to compile a build set for that set built, just because of the fact I feel as though every trait within the course of this game synergizes really well, and you really can't go wrong with trying to get every trait within the game, because there is no cap limit. So by all means, go for it. As you can see, I am pretty much almost capped on all my traits here. Just missing 5 on teamwork. But yeah, nonetheless, that's going to be pretty much it when it comes to the overall build as a whole. If you are splitting up the set here, one of the things I like to go about doing is if you go into options, you go into gameplay, you can go down to where it says show helmet, and you can keep the helmet on if you like the look of it, or you can go to gameplay and switch show helmet off. So this way your cosmetic set looks a little bit more put together, so to speak. But yeah, I'm going to cut the video here. We're going to jump into some gameplay. I'll go over some tips, tricks, as well as guides to show you guys how this actually works. So just give me one moment, and we will be right back. Alright, and we are back here into some gameplay. I'll be going over tips, tricks, as well as guides to help you guys utilize this build in harder level difficulties. Speaking of harder level difficulties, we are on Nightmare mode on Earth. So from there, I'll be walking you through the pros and cons of the set build to be able to get a better understanding of when to use this build more effectively and when not to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this, shall we? So what is cool about this build is that you are a lightweight base frame. It allows you to utilize the ability to dodge roll quite effectively, to be able to tie in your attacks with your dodge roll, whether it be heavy or light base attacks when coming into a melee focus build. What is nice about this build is too, since you are utilizing the hero sword, you have the ability to use your attacks not only from melee range but from range as well, and still take full benefit over the increased damage output, increased attack speed, and so on and so forth of your melee based abilities, because it's still considered to be a melee based attack. One thing to note, however, is that when you are using the hero sword from a range perspective, is that you do utilize a lot of your stamina. So you want to be really cautious with that, because once you run out of stamina, as you clearly saw there, you don't get to use your hero sword from range anymore. It will only work in a melee range, so you have to be very, very mindful of that. What's also really nice is too, as you can clearly see as I clear through all of these ads here, I do have quite a bit of survivability utilizing the sidearm, which allows me to use the insects to heal off of. And as you can see, when I jump in here with my lightning attacks, I can just easily clear out ads and pretty much one-shot them accordingly, as long as they don't have a high output armor value. It also allows you to burst elites down to about half health, maybe a little bit farther, depending on how many stacks of blink charges you have off of your lightning, which is really, really nice because it gives you an overall AoE setup for this particular build, which not only gives you AoE, but it also gives you high mobility too. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when coming into a fight to be able to approach a lot of these encounters. From there, you can also see too, I can also keep my distance and safely be able to execute exploders from quite a ways away, even with my hero sword. You get quite a bit of range with it, so don't be afraid to use it from a little bit farther out. Now, it is a little bit harder to aim, mind you, so it doesn't really have a tracking mechanism as some of the other ones happen to do so, more or less like an aim assist. So from there, you want to be really cautious on how you use it. So you want to aim more towards the center of the screen, so that way you get the full arc and it also hits your target pretty effectively. It does have a slower base projectile speed, but it has a wide hitbox, so you'll be able to utilize that pretty efficiently if you can really master it. From there, as you can see, an elite ends up rolling up on me, so I want to take all my consumables so that way I have a little bit more self-sustain when encountering this elite. And then from there, I just lace into him with all of my heavy attacks off of my hero sword, but he does end up getting a quick swipe on me, so I swap over to my healing pistol, and then I shoot him down. The reason I do this is because I'm waiting for my healing to be able to proc, so from there, when I get full health again, I can go in and engage him. Best way to go about engaging is to open up with my lightning attacks, and then from there, I backpedal a little bit to be able to get some distance, and then I use my my hero sword from a range to be able to capitalize on that melee range DPS, which is fantastic. And then, of course, if he was still alive, I was ready to transition in with the blink. From there, I ended up getting pretty much blindsided by another elite here, so I ended up swapping over to my healing pistol to be able to get some health, and while I was waiting for the heal, I swapped over to the assault rifle to get a little bit more damage output, and then I went back in with my blink, and then I started cleaving out ads as well as this elite pretty effectively. What's nice about the hero sword is that it has not only a very, very fast attack speed because of every amulet you have corresponding with it, but it also has the ability to have a very, very wide arc, which allows you to hit not only one but 3 enemies in one swing, which is really nice, because then from there you can pretty much cleave out ads left and right as they come and pretty much get in your way on a continuous basis. Another nice thing is too is that you do also have a charge attack with it, which allows you to get a little bit of distance off of a slide, which allows you to stab right into them, which does equivalent to what a heavy attack would do. So you can pretty much knock them out pretty quickly when it comes to a lot of these ads. So as it transitions here, we are going to be jumping over into a boss fight. This boss fight is a little bit more tedious. Now keep in mind when approaching a melee build, um, all the boss fights are going to be a little bit more tedious just because of the fact that you do have to change up your playstyle a little bit because you have to get a little bit closer to your enemy, of course. So from there, with this particular boss fight, the reason it ended up being so tedious, so to speak, is because the boss I ended up encountering had such a small hitbox. When the boss ends up having such a small hitbox, it's harder for the sword to actually register the hits themselves because the sword has such a wide arc swing, and when it comes to your charge attack, like I had mentioned before, there's no auto tracking, there's no aim assist. So from there, you really have to be pretty precise with a lot of your attacks when it comes to using melee. So since the hitbox was so small, it took a lot longer than to be expected to be able to knock his health down to about half, to where I got it to the encounter where he ended up growing a little bit. So from there, what I ended up doing was I ended up proccing a lot of my consumables and kiting around a little bit, just getting melee hits in to be able to charge up my mod. And then from there, what I ended up doing from that standpoint is I ended up backpedaling a little bit to be able to create some distance and use some of my stamina from a range. But as you can see here, because I was weaving in my dodge rolls as well as my heavy attacks with my sword, my stamina was getting eaten up quite a bit. So I had to be very cautious of that and play a little bit slower when encountering the boss because I didn't want to burn through all my stamina. So as I continuously progress on the boss here, you can see that I'm trying to backpedal a little bit and just trying to focus on the adds before I end up jumping on top of the boss. Because one, the sword is great at cleaving out the adds, but from there you don't want the adds to go about building up because they will whittle down your health and they will also block off your escape route to be able to kite around. Because with a melee based build, your biggest weakness is going to not have the ability to kite. If you don't have the ability to kite, then from there you won't have the ability to maneuver accordingly to be able to deal with any situation. So you always want to make sure that you'll have the ability to maneuver around just in case you happen to get blindsided by a few enemies or if they happen to have a tendency of collapsing on you. So you want to be really cautious in that regard. Another thing to note too when it comes to the melee setup I happen to be doing here, as you can see, sometimes it's better to play a little bit slower than some of the other build sets I happen to have when it comes to this melee perspective, just because of the fact that there are certain times that the bosses actually allow you to melee them. So in this particular case, the boss actually ends up getting a little bit staggered when he ends up rolling around, and from there it takes a little bit for him to start getting back on his feet and start maneuvering again. So from there I capitalize on this by using Blink to close the gap, and then I just immediately go to town on him with my hero sword, trying to get him down to half health, because once I go about doing so, what happens is with this particular encounter he gets a lot bigger, meaning that he gets a bigger hitbox. So with this particular boss he actually gets easier as he gets lower in HP. As of right now, he's just super annoying. So from there, what I end up doing is I use my Blink to backpedal a little bit, and then I swap over to my secondary weapon to utilize my mod to get some healing capability, so that way I get more and more self-sustain. It's always important to note when you end up dropping around half HP, you really want to start utilizing your healing potential, because if you don't, it's very easy for you to get staggered and you can get overrun, and from there what happens is that you just instantly get a mowed down. So you don't want that to happen, so you want to be really cautious of your HP, because that is the only form of self-sustain you happen to have. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you are around 75%, 50% HP, you are backpedaling a little bit, utilizing your healing potential off your sidearm, and then going back in when you're at full health again. You never want to approach an encounter where you're not going to be at full health in melee range, just because of the fact that anything could happen where you end up getting stagger locked, and if that's the case, you might not have time to heal, you might not end up being able to get into a position where you can maneuver out of it. So you want to make sure that you're always going into a melee encounter at full HP if you can. It's not going to be every time, you won't have that luxury, so from there it really depends on the resources you have at the end of the day to be able to capitalize on this, but you always want to make sure if you're going into melee range, you want to have full HP doing so if you can. From there, I end up swapping over to my rifle here just to clear out some of the adds, just because I'm waiting on my stamina to go about regenning, because I don't want to start using melee attacks when I don't have any stamina, just in case the boss ends up showing up again and popping out. which he does. So from there, I backpedal a little bit, I position myself accordingly, and then I use the blink to be able to jump on top of the boss. Once I go about doing so, from there I'm able to position again and wait for my blink charges to come back up, and I'm still regenerating these charges because I'm still utilizing my melee potential. So from there, I'm just making sure that I'm keeping myself topped off with all my consumables, and just keep rinsing and repeating while the ads come out, clearing them out, generating my mod capacity, letting my consumables heal me, getting increased attack speed, and so on and so forth. As you can see though, it is a lot easier to hit this target now that he's a lot bigger and has a much more massive hitbox. So from there, I'm able to consistently land my heavy attacks accordingly, which is very nice, because that allows me to not only capitalize on damage output, but it also allows me to keep my distance and still maintain my ground, which is really nice in case something were to arise where I end up having to deal with more than a few ads. I end up transitioning into my blink because I want fast burst damage here, so I end up blinking on top of him 3 times just to get the damage output out. Keep in mind when you are using blink, if you're not familiar with it, blink does have the ability to auto lock onto your targets, which allows you to instantly teleport in front of them, which will allow you to not really have to focus on where you're blinking, so to speak, but it's more or less focusing on your next move after you blink, because when you blink you have a slight delay in your animation, so you want to be very cautious of that. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for that boss fight, and he is toast.
I can't believe it. I'm alive.
So that's pretty much going to be it, guys, with the video. I hope you guys liked it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post them down below in the comment section. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, so that way you get notifications in regards to when I do any more build videos within the course of Remnant from the Ashes. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you guys real soon. Later.